Good morning, good morning. Morning, morning. Okay. I will just wait for everyone to get settled before we start. We're hoping to keep to the program so that we can finish here by 1 o'clock. So if I can just have everyone's attention, please. So good morning, everyone. Good morning to the Minister of Finance, Honorable Iipumbu Shiimi. Thank you for joining us here today for the consultation. Okay, we'll just get started once everyone is settled. Helvi, can we have your attention, please? Okay, maybe I think I must stand in the middle of the room so I can have everyone's attention. Okay. Thank you, Minister, again for coming. Good morning, colleagues from civil society, stakeholders, everyone that's joining us online as well. This is the consultative meeting with civil society, with the Minister of Finance. Before we get into the program and all the technicalities there too, can I just ask everyone to rise so we can sing the national anthem? Thank you. The mid-year budget review is likely to be tabled in the National Assembly in October. As part of the mid-year review, the Minister is expected, who is joining us today, to provide an update on the progress of the 2022-2023 budget tabled in February this year. This consultation will be an opportunity for civil society to raise issues that they think should be prioritized in the 2023-2024 national budget. Before I hand over to my colleague, Ms. Carola Engelbrecht, just a few things that you would need to have with you when you entered or probably given. So the program, a copy of the program, everyone should have that. So we're going to start off with the welcoming and introduction by Ms. Carola Engelbrecht. After that, the Minister of Finance will go over the objectives of this consultation with us. After that, I've been informed that the Director General of the NPC is unable to join us today, so we're not going to have that as part of the program. We're also going to have presentations by the Ministry of Finance and the National Planning Commission right after the remarks by the Minister. And then after that, we're going to have discussions and input from the civil society representatives and stakeholders joining us today. If you're not able to share your inputs maybe now, you're also welcome to send that to us in writing, and we will share it with the ministry. Aside from that, you should also have the feedback form. So if once the event is done, just kindly fill out the feedback form and just give it to one of the colleagues, either Deshi or Mia there. You'll also find with you, there's a handout. So there was a consultation last year with the Ministry of Finance, and these are some of the issues that were raised when that consultation took place. The toilets you will find as you walk out, your first left, that's where the toilets are. We're going to have people making contributions here in person, but we also have some stakeholders and civil society representatives joining us online through Zoom. You're also welcome to raise your hand, and the technical team will just flag that to us. So without any further ado, Ms. Engelbrecht.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Carola Engelbrecht, and I'm the coordinator of the Civil Society Information Center, Namibia. A hearty welcome to everybody here, and especially to the Minister. Thank you for gracing our gathering with your presence, and we look forward to exchange ideas on how to improve or shift money from here to there. This is not the first meeting with the Ministry of Finance this year. We already had a session on the 6th of July with civil society, where we were trained sort of by the National Planning Commission and the Ministry of Finance. What are the processes through which the national budget goes? When does it start? And so that we as civil society can find an entry point, that we are not always only reacting to a finished budget, but that we are actually proactive and already now thinking about the next budget cycle. The training session was very complicated, and I don't think we all still know exactly what happens when and where can we make input, and I think that we can have further discussions about that. The previous meeting was on 6th July was to see where can civil society slot in with government to plan the budget cycles, and how it grows actually from local level. And Civil Society Information Center, we went out into the regions recently, and there was also one of the regional councillors present, and she nicely explained how the budget is, inputs are coming from the grassroots up, but somewhere they get stuck, and we have to unstick and loosen those bottlenecks. And also grassroots activists are not quite aware about how to give their input at local level, at regional level, and then that it goes up to the ministry and also to cabinet. So we are all in a learning process, but we are welcoming the openness from the ministry and their availability. It's a pity that the National Planning Commission couldn't be here with the training session. They surprised us with their presence, and that was a good thing, because they are the agency that must actually implement the money that they get from the Ministry of Finance. So I hope that this will be a good engagement. The Minister has stressed again and again, and also the public relations officer from the ministry, that this is not a session where they will talk the most, but that we are supposed to have the largest chunk of today's 2 hours to give our input. I hope we come prepared, and thank you to Mr. Hopwood, Graham, that you have prepared the previous inputs so that we don't lose track of them. With that, back to Bradley. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you very much. So we heard from the coordinator of the Civil Society Information Center. It's definitely important to loosen those bottlenecks so that people on the grassroots level, or those civil society activists and organizations, that their views are also and inputs are also heard. This consultation is actually jointly organized, as you will see, by the Institute for Public Policy Research as well as the Civil Society Information Center. Without any further ado, I'd like to call upon the Minister of Finance, Honorable Shiimi, to give us some remarks on the objectives of this consultation.
Thank you very much, Director of Ceremony or Proceedings, and also Ms. Engelbrecht for your welcoming remarks. And good morning to all of you. I believe we know why we're here. So we from the Ministry of Finance and the National Planning Commission are very happy to be with you today. We want to have a conversation with you. And the conversation is really about how do we make the budget fit for purpose? How do we make it an instrument that is going to address the needs of Namibians? Because that's really the purpose of the budget. The budget is an instrument of policy that we use to address our needs. And you are here because you are going to help us to do that. So I'm here with my colleagues from the Ministry of Finance and also National Planning Commission. So unfortunately, the Director General of the National Planning Commission could not be with us today. He was excited to be here, but unfortunately he had to be. He had to go out of town. He actually left this morning, so that's why he couldn't be here. And that was unforeseen. It was not planned before. So Ms. Engelbrecht was saying that, when we were having a training session, it wasn't very clear as to when do you provide input as a civil society? When does the budget cycle start? I want to inform you today, this is actually the beginning of the budget cycle. Because in October, we are going to table what is called the midterm review. But the midterm review is really just the review. What is important in that review is also the budget policy framework for the next 3 years. So during the midterm review, the tabling of the midterm review, we also table what is called the fiscal framework, which is basically the policy that informs the budget. Now, if we want to provide input into the budget formulation process, this is the time. This is the time you should tell us when you are going to think about the budget for the next 3 years, you should think about these priorities. You need to make sure that these priorities are addressed in the budget. And at least we will have time to think about those priorities, because we can then space them in for the next 3 years. So I hope that simplifies the process, that the process really starts during this period. You should not wait. I know many people get excited about when we table the main budget in February. That's already too late. It is already too late, because by that time by December, we're just doing the final touches to the budget. Having heard from you during these budget consultations, and also having heard from the ministries, because our intensive discussions with the ministries are actually taking place before the midterm is tabled. In December, January, again, we just call them back if there's a need to call them back. Sometimes we even tell them that if you don't need to talk to us, because we have already talked to you in September, October, you don't have to talk to us unless something has changed. So for both all other stakeholders and ministries, this is the time where you can give us your input so that we can consider those inputs into the budget framework for the next 3 years. So we are here to hear from you. So as I said, I'm here with my colleagues. They will give you a brief presentation. And again, we don't want that to be too long, because we are not here because we want to give you information. We are here because we want to get information from you. So whatever we're going to tell you today should not restrict your thinking. This is basically just to set a scene for our discussion. So we must look at it from that light. So we will start with information on the economic development, and then I will ask Patefesi from the Director of Economic Policy Advisory Services to give us a short presentation, just to give us a snapshot as to what are the economic developments, the present economic developments. Then Helvi will give us an idea about what we are doing about economic diversification. We have given you this information before. Today is just an update as to where we are with that process, because it's going to be a long process. So I believe every time when we meet, we will give an update as to what we are doing. And then we will briefly talk about the budget, the operational budget. How is it formulated? Where do we spend resources at the moment in terms of the operational budget side? And then from there, we'll then come to the development budget, which is basically, the capital budget, the investment side of spending. When we build roads, when we build schools, when we build hospitals. So how do we determine these priorities, and where is this spending going at the moment? So that's what you'll hear from our colleagues from the National Planning Commission. So the gentleman who's chairing the meeting there, if you see him, is from the National Planning Commission. Director of Ceremony, let me leave it there and invite my colleagues to start with the presentation, unless you like to say something. Thank you very much.
Am I able to remove this? Can I remove it? How do I do it? Just pull it. Okay. Thank you. I think I will stand somewhere there so that I can see on the presentation and be able to talk to you. My name is Festus Ngifenwa. I work for the Ministry of Finance, the director responsible for economic policy advisory services. Yeah, I will take you through the first part of the presentation. Can we move to the first slide, please? Yeah, next slide. We are starting with global economic development. Again, please? Yeah. Okay. What we are saying on the global economic development is that, according to the IMF, the Russian invasion on Ukraine and the subsequent sanctions imposed on Russia has changed the global economic recovery trajectory, and it becomes a significant risk to the global economy. So there are two. It also creates two policy difficult trade-offs where countries around the globe are tackling the inflations while at the same time trying to safeguard the economic recovery. And then on the other hand, there is an elevated need to support the vulnerable citizens, while the governments are also need to build their fiscal buffers. So, and this is the key, as I have indicated, significant risk, which affect the whole macroeconomic fundamentals. And this is more specifically through the increased inflations, disruption in the global supply chains, and also elevated or increased food prices around the globe. We can go to the next slide, please. Now coming to the domestic economy, you may be aware of the data that were recently published by Namibia Statistics Agency, which indicates that the economic activities during the first quarter of 2022 expanded by 5.3%. This is actually an improvement, from the contraction of about 4.9% in the first quarter of 2021. And this is mainly driven by, the fact that, the impacts of COVID-19 is dissipating. However, the current economic developments, in the current economic development, especially what I have indicated, the impact of the Russian war in Ukraine, poses significant risk also to the domestic economy. We have seen increases in prices through fuel prices, and then which also spilled over to the food prices. So in terms of our price development, inflation continued to increase, recorded at 6% in June 2022, and this is an increase comparing to 4.1% recorded in June last year. And on a monthly basis, it's also an increase from 5.4% recorded in May. So in response to increasing inflations, our central bank, just like other central banks around the globe, tightened the monetary policy with interest rates raised to 4.75% in June, and this is after 3 consecutive increases. But going forward, we are projecting that the economic growth will improve, but at a very, very low pace, considering the current economic environment. But it's in line with our current fiscal strategy. Just a note there to indicate that our economic projections, the current economic projections, did not yet take into account the developments, the current developments. We did not factor in the, effects of what is happening in the global. We are busy revising, and the revised figures will be available somewhere around mid-September. We can move to the next. On fiscal policy, just to give you some highlight of on some of key economic indicators or fiscal indicators. In terms of revenue, we are estimating relatively better revenue in the current MTEF, of course, compared to the previous MTEF, and coming mainly from corporate tax, especially diamond mining, and then also from the gradual improvement in the VAT and SACU receipts, although they are still on the lower side. So expenditure still remain elevated, and this affects also some key indicators like the debt. The debt remains high, and interest payments also remains on the higher side, estimated to average at around 16.1% compared to, that's an average for the MTEF, for the current MTEF, compared to about 13.4% in the previous MTEF. And the budget deficit is stabilizing, although still remain high. We are estimating still to be on average 5.5% in the current MTEF, of course comparing to 7.2% in the previous MTEF. So just to give you some highlight of some key fiscal reforms, economic diversification and growth strategy, HELB will elaborate on that one. Fiscal consolidation program, we still believe that this is really necessary to stabilize government spending and also to bring down the growth in the debt, government debt stock. Reforms in civil servants are ongoing, including the restructuring of SEMAS and also the recruitment in the civil service. And then you may also be aware of the launch of the Sovereign Wealth Fund that was recently launched, the Welwitschia Fund, with the seed capital of around 300 million. And then also other reforms, including the improvement in the governance model of the public enterprises with the development of the public policy ownership management, but the public policy, public asset ownership policy. We have other reforms that are also ongoing, moving towards the completion. For example, the national single windows, new container terminal at Walfish Bay, port, and special economic zone. And then lastly, the Central Security Depository, which is now due for gazetting and will be operationalized immediately after the gazetting. So I will end there and then give to my colleague Helvi to take you through the next presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Tatefese. Good morning, everyone. My name is Helvi. I'm also from the Ministry of Finance. I'm the Economic Advisor in the Office of the Minister. So I'll give you just a high-level update. Like Tateshimi has said, we did share some detail when we did the budget consultation with civil society last year in terms of the economic diversification strategy that we are working on. If you can move to the next slide, please. Thank you. So, like we shared with you last year, we started with this work in May 2020, and the idea was really for all of us with the understanding that the economy hasn't been growing for the past 5 years, since 2016. So we wanted to re-look at the configuration of the economy, to do detailed quantitative analysis for us to understand what are the challenges that are holding back growth, and for us to also then identify, having looked at what those challenges and the binding constraints are, to identify if we do want to reignite growth in the economy, what areas or what sectors or what products should us as a government, in conjunction with the private sector, try to promote so that we can bring back growth. So that's the work that we have done on a national level. And in terms of those diversification sectors that we have identified are the 5 that we are listing there: in the food industry, chemicals, transport and logistics, machinery and electronics, as well as in metals and mining. And what we have done now since last year is to basically set up dedicated task forces where we are working with the private sector in those different sectors, for us to then understand the specific constraints that are facing them and put together really dedicated teams of people from both the public and private sector to work on trying to alleviate those constraints that they are facing as quickly as possible. And at the same time, last year we also gave you a list of the 3 policy pillars that we have basically decided to focus on, and the thinking is really for this work to form the base of the upcoming NDP6. So in terms of what will be the focus work for the next 5-6 years, we'll be looking at fulfilling basically those 3 policy pillars, try to better optimize the stewardship of our natural resources in terms of what are the regulations and laws that we have in place to exploit our natural resources, and how can we get better out of that, and then looking at how do we create more opportunities for Namibians, in particular looking at specific focus groups of the youth, women, people that are not highly skilled, and that is what we are trying to explore through the different sectors that we are trying to promote, and then also focusing on revamping the role that government as a public sector can play as a growth enabler, and trying to remove whatever bottlenecks we have identified in the process. Can you move to the next slide? So, really specifically, I think to zoom into the specific work on the industries and trying to create opportunities, what we have done is work that's threefold. One, there are some products and sectors that we have identified that do not have a presence in the Namibian economy at the moment, and what we've been doing is really targeted investment promotion work that is being spearheaded by the Investment Promotion and Development Board to speak to investors that are working in those sectors in other countries, and to try and present our case as Namibia, that we are an attractive investment destination, and for them to come and set up shop here. Secondly, for those sectors and products that we already have some sort of presence, we have set up what we are calling productivity task forces. We started with the first one in December last year, focusing on high value fruits, which is the people that are producers of grapes, dates, and blueberries. So we are having a discussion with these producers for us to understand if they want to expand their current operation, what's holding them back? What are those issues? And as a government, how can we assist them to alleviate those constraints so that they can increase production? So having worked on the high value fruit sector since December, we have gained a lot of experience, and next month we are launching the next productivity task force, which is on the meat value chain. So we will set up and start discussion with the meat sector, and then thereafter in September we are also starting a discussion on the film industry. That's the work that we are doing. And lastly, the one issue that we have identified as a key constraint or a binding constraint to growth in the Namibian economy is the issue of specialized skills. And therefore, what we are working on is really looking at how do we streamline or review our current processes in a way that we are then able to have really access to the type of skills, specialized skills that Namibia needs, and we can then bring in those skills and enable us to establish industries that we do not already have. Can you move to the next slide? And lastly, having done the work at the national level, we wanted to go a step further and look at different pockets of places basically in the country where you have a high concentration of the population. So we are looking at services in Windhoek. So we wanted to see if you want to reignite economic activities in Windhoek or services in Windhoek, what industries or what services hold potential. So we have done that research, and we have found a few sectors that we are listing there. And the work now is for us to really start engagements with either existing players in those sectors or investors outside the country in those similar sectors, for us to have a conversation on how we can encourage such activities to take place in Windhoek. And we are doing the same work in the north with regards to the basically improving the potential or the productivity for agriculture in the north, both looking at what are the options for the green schemes, as well as how do you improve production or productivity rather around the ecosystems of homesteads, which we already have in existence. And lastly, we're also working on the coast, specifically looking at how we can improve the competitiveness of the port of Walvis Bay itself, and then also looking at the industries that are currently in the margins of Walvis Bay, so the tourism, logistics, and mining industry, to see what is the current constraints that are basically inhibiting those industries from expanding further. So in summary, that's really the work that we have done, and we just wanted to share really at the high level the kind of work that we are doing. And obviously, like Tate Shiimi has said, going forward, we will keep updating you. And then, like I said, this work will feed the basic broader strategy that will be captured in NDP 6. Thank you.
Actually, I would just make sure that it's the correct slide on the screen. Also allow me to take off my mask because I have places that really affect my talking. Sorry for that. Need to be adjusted. Thank you. Thanks, Soya. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. I'm Taina Nankela, Director of Budget Management and Control within the Ministry of Finance, and I'll take you through the operational budget overview. That is aimed to provide you with the modus operandi of the operational budget that, of course, includes the major policies that drives the government operational budget. First slide. The preparation of the budget is guided or revolves around 4 instruments, and that is now the Vision 2030, the National Development Plan, which is now our Harambee Prosperity Plan, the Strategic Plan, and the Medium-Term Expenditure Plans. Those 4 instruments, they are the ones that informs our annual budget, which we call appropriation budget. And that is basically now our budget formulation framework. Next slide. Budgeting approach in terms of resource allocation created 4 sectors as reflected there. And these 4 sectors are just created in order to address the socio-economic dynamics. And the presentation enumerates on the major cost drivers per sector. And just to start with the first sector, which is the social sector. The social sector carries the teaching and health personnel, the number of the transfer to NASFA, that is now our Namibia Student Financial Assistance Fund, the pharmaceuticals, the pathology services, and then the social safety nets. Moving on to the second sector, it carries the catering for the inmates, the law and order operations, government cost-related borrowings and related charges, and then also the provision for the justice, and as well the cost for the defense in terms of their territorial integrity. The third sector, which is the economic sectors, it carries the public service employee medical aid scheme, the cost related to the borrowings. My apology, I mentioned this earlier. The cost related to the borrowings and related charges, that is part of the economic sector, and then the subsidy to public operations. The fourth sector, that is administrative sector, it carried the maintenance of the software and infrastructure, that is now for the whole government, and also the administration of the foreign missions. The last sector is the infrastructure sector that carries the maintenance of government infrastructures, that's now the buildings, maintenance of government vehicles, and also the cost related to the rate and taxes for the fixed properties, and as well the cost of property rental for government offices. In addition to those specific spending pressures, there are also some other major causes that drives also the budget, which are the the utilities and the personnel expenditure. Next slide. The current slide depicts the pictorial presentation on the sectoral expenditure trend for the 3 financial years, including the current financial year, with the social sector that being the highest absorber of the budget, followed by the economic sector. And the lowest absorber is now being the infrastructure sector that is normally taken care of by the development budget. And this is due to the nature of the activities of the Department of Transport in terms of the maintenance and upgrading of the transport infrastructures. Moving on, the next slide. The current slide shows the budget expenditure by 7 economic classification across the sectors. And as per the current budget allocation, which is 65.7 billion for the current financial year 22-23, the personnel expenditure takes up the largest share of the operational budget, which is about 46%. That's the first bar there. And then I'm only focusing on the third bar, which is now for the current financial year 22-23. And then the main driver and that component, it's the teaching and the health personnel I mentioned earlier. And then the second item there is a subsidy and current transfer that takes up the second lead. And it's taking up about 28% of the operational budget. And that basically includes the transfer to the state corporations, extra budgetary unit, regional councils, and as well the social safety nets. The third category is now the interest on borrowings and related charges. And that's an indication that our cost of borrowing is very high, and it's take up almost like 14%, and that is aimed to fill up the gap of our deficit. And like my colleagues, Mr. Ngifenda, when he was presenting, he also mentioned that the cost of borrowing remains at the highest as well. These spending pressures, the three that I just mentioned now, which is now the personnel, the subsidies and the other current transfers, and then the interest borrowings, those take up the big chunk and only leave 11% for the other goods and services that also cater critical activities such as the transport, the utilities, the pharmaceuticals, and other related expenditures that are required in terms of the service delivery. So in a nutshell, that is the operational budget overview, and I thank you very much.
Thank you very much, moderator. Good morning, all. Yes, my name is Martin Kaonzo from the National Planning Commission. My task here today is quite simple. I'm going to take you through the development budget for the current MTEF. During the preparation or the formulation of the development budget, we prioritize to fund projects that are actually ongoing, and those projects, they have some contractual obligations. We also looked at the projects that would assist us in terms of fighting COVID-19 pandemic. We further looked at projects that have potential to contribute significantly to the reviving of the Namibian economy. We lastly looked at projects that were actually abandoned and put on hold due to various implementation challenges. Next slide. The next slide only indicates how do we allocate the resources, the development budget resources per financial year. One can actually see the total allocation per financial year is plus minus 7 billion. That gives us the total allocation per MTEF, for MTEF to 21.4 billion. Next slide. How do we allocate the resources as the NDP 5 goals? One can actually see the goal under economic progression, which is achieve inclusive, equitable, and sustainable economic growth, received the highest allocation, amounting to 71.5% share of the total development budget. The second allocation of the development budget went to the goal under a social progression, which is build capable and health human resource, with the budget share of 17.3. Let's move to the next. Yes, how did we allocate the development budget resources to the regions? One would actually see the bigger chunk of the development budget went to Commerce and Irongo region. And the reason why Commerce and Irongo region, they have the highest allocation is because of the magnitude of the projects that are being implemented in those two regions. Those projects, they would require more resources in order for us to complete them or to implement them fully. Can we go to the next slide? Yes, what are those projects that received the highest budget allocation? As I mentioned in the last slide, we were saying that a railway network upgrading is one of the projects that received the bigger chunk of the development budget. We also have the construction of Bindu-Okahanja Road, as well as construction of Bindu-Hosea-Kutako Road. Those projects are actually taking a bigger chunk. As you can see, the magnitude of those projects are low. They require a huge funding. We also have some projects in the Irongo region, such as the construction of Swakopmund-Bautis Bay Road, Swakopmund-Hentis Bay Road, as well as some, when we look at the country nationwide, we also have projects like water infrastructure, upgrading and renovation of basic education and health facilities. We also allocated bigger chance to those projects. Lastly, but not least, we allocated a bigger chance to massive urban land services to all the local authorities that we have in Namibia, including the settlements that are under the care of the regional councils. Ladies and gentlemen, this slide is just to give an indication how the development budget resources been utilized for the past 3 years. One can actually see that in 2019-2020 financial year, the financial execution rate was 87%. And then it dropped in 2020-2021 to 82%, mainly because of the lockdown as a result of COVID-19 pandemic. And then it improved in 2021-2022 financial year to 93%. As we speak, we are busy implementing the current budget of 2022-2023 financial year, and the current execution rate stands at 20% just for the past 3 months. We have managed to execute the development budget for the current financial year to 20%, which is not so bad. I think thank you. This is the end of my slide. Yes.
Other gentlemen as well join you by the panel there, Mr. Festus Ngifinwa. I'll just grab a chair here. So, I mean, we heard a lot from all of the speakers, but I think the main thing, or one of the main things that the minister indicated at the very beginning, was that this is actually the time for inputs. Like, come February next year, that's going to be way too late. Couple of important documents to keep in mind for this year, which is the midterm budget review as well as the budget policy framework for the next 3 years. I won't go into the technicalities of the presentations by the speakers. What we will do is we will share it on the CIVIC +264 website, the presentation as well as a small write-up. We've got about an hour for the inputs, questions, and contributions. Seeing as we've got some people here and also people online, we're going to be quite strict in terms of the timing for inputs. I would maybe request that you perhaps keep it to about 2 minutes. We're going to take 3 questions at a time, and then you can direct them to the minister, and then the minister can perhaps answer them or with the assistance of his team, as well as the gentleman that's joining us from the National Planning Commission. Just to extend the courtesy to the participants joining us online, we're going to take about 3 questions for the first round, answer them, and then do that again. Let's see, are there any questions from the participants on Zoom at this time? The participants can just raise their hands on Zoom. Okay, so it looks like we don't have any contributions from Zoom yet. So we will just start here. Just indicate your name and your affiliation as well before you ask your question. So I see there's 1, 2, 3 hands at the moment. So we're going to take those 3 hands starting here at the front.
Thank you very much, Maggie. Now I'm finally up on that. Morning, everybody.
I think it will just pick up.
Good morning, everybody. I'll just sit down so that I can get my questions. I have 3 questions. Civil society met with you last year and gave you these questions. Can you please repeat feedback on it? Because there were lots of questions regarding tax and fiscal issues, civil society concerns, and gender issues, because that is the main point of the meeting, to get feedback. The second question, I'm also sitting on the APRN. I'm part here with my colleague, Ms. Kambala. We're sitting on the National Governing Council of the African Peer Review Mechanism of the National Secretariat here in Namibia. And we have developed the National Plan of Action, which we are aware of. But the big issue with the National Plan of Action for Namibia through the APRN is the funding. And this is something we need to look at, because if we want to look at governance issues and how we fund important governance issues or holding our government accountable, it's having money for the National Plan of Action. My third question is, does the Ministry of Finance work closely with the Anti-Corruption Commission? Because one of our biggest issues in this country is corruption, and that's where we lose a lot of money, and that's where a lot of money that could be prioritized for important development projects is getting lost. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Let's just pass it to the gentleman at the back in the yellow shirt.
Thank you. Good morning once again. My question here is okay, my name is Iran Demana from the Comrades Association as a youth-led organization. My question is in terms of the basic income plan. Lately we have a figure that came from the World Bank that says 1.6 Namibians are living in poverty. So my question is that in terms of the budget allocation, don't you think that the Ministry of Finance should also consider them implementing the basic income plan, allocating most of the budget to the basic income plan, because this allows as well as also small SMEs to function freely. So the other thing was that in terms of, I saw here the presentations that mentioned about the buildings, maintaining government buildings, and I've seen the Katutura Hospital. I mean, if I was there, I had an auntie that was sick, but the way that I saw that building, it doesn't look like it's maintained at all. So I just want that the ministry should improve on these areas, and as well touch on the basic income plan that from the age of 0 to 59 of age, that every Namibian should give this at least. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. The other person I recognized was, yeah, you just pass the mic over.
Good afternoon, my name is Olivia, SBYL. I have 3 questions. How does Ministry of, those questions are directed to the Minister. These questions are directed to the Minister of Finance. How does Ministry of Finance scrutinize the foreseen budgets from different ministries to ensure finances are not merely dished out for the tenuous reasons or justification that a budget has been tabled to the Ministry of Finance? The second one, we have spoken about inflation. How does the Ministry of Finance as a go-to guide for funds willing to deal and control the aspect with regards to the economic development of Namibia as a developing state? The last question is, how does Comrade Finance Minister as the core spearhead of public finances plan to ensure public funds are safeguarded, used for their intended purposes, as well as ensure the allocated funds do not vanish into thin air, as we have read through different cases, keeping in mind that every ministry is supposed to ensure funds are managed, as promised through the feasibility study. Also, just ensuring that budgets are not merely jotted down in order to secure an exorbitant amount of money to a certain ministry or region, but rather truly utilized to the fullest effect and ensuring Namibia is catching up with the current and upcoming industrial revolution. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Can you just also please introduce yourself, your name, and more in there? I don't get it down. I will just pass on to
Thank you very much for these questions and contributions. I believe some is basically just advice to us in government to think about. So we are taking very good notes. I'm not sure whether I will be able to respond to all these questions because there are many. I believe it's probably better if we can, maybe when we go back to the office, we can also just respond in writing. Because if I have to read all these questions and provide responses to them, it means that that we will probably only spend time discussing these issues that have been raised here. But maybe I can provide, just a quick update on some. I see here, for instance, a question on when is the bill going to be tabled in Parliament that is going to enable us to zero-rate sanitary pads? In other words, not textile sanitary pads. So I can provide a quick update on that. So the bill has been in the making for quite a while, and bill making is it's something that takes a bit of time, but it has now gone through many stages. The stage of approved by cabinet, the stage of approved by the cabinet committee on legislation, which is a technical arm of that looks at the bill. It's now with the legal drafters. So I'm hoping that before the end of the year, I will have a chance to table it in Parliament. If not end of this year, before the end of this year, probably in the first session of Parliament next year. That means between February and March. So that's more or less where we are, because it's not only about that. There were other tax amendments that have to be done because it's an income tax act that has to be amended for you to be able to do that. So the income tax had to be amended. Also other aspects of the income tax had to be amended. So it took a bit of a while. So, but we are happy that we have made progress in that regard. There's a question with regard to where are we with the stadium. I believe we have provided money to the ministry, so we are waiting for feedback. Last time I checked with the minister, in fact that was last week. She told me that she's still busy with the procurement process. But hopefully in the next couple of weeks or so, they will finalize the procurement process so that the actual work, civil work, can start on the stadium. What else should I provide? Okay, then there was a question on collateral for SMEs, small businesses. Well, we have been looking at how to support SMEs for quite some time, and we realize that SMEs, they actually don't just need money; they actually need a number of things. Money is just one of the things that they need. So we realize that we need to improve the whole ecosystem. So what are the intervention mechanisms that we are putting in place? So first, collateral is one of them. They like collateral because these are just people who are just starting their businesses, so they have not had a chance to accumulate wealth so that they can build up enough security. So they also don't have skills and knowledge and know-how to run a business. So you also need to support them to run a business. And many times they are not able to pay back loans immediately because business take time to mature and to start to generate the necessary cash flow to be able to pay back a loan. So sometimes they need what is called patient capital, money that is only going to be paid over a period of time, not immediately. But also more importantly, what we realize that SMEs actually need a market. So you can give them all this money, but if nobody is buying their products, it's as good as you have not helped them. So when we are looking at the support for SMEs, we have to look at this whole ecosystem and improve that ecosystem before you can really make a meaningful impact on the success of SMEs. In terms of collateral, you may recall that in 2020 we actually launched what is called a guarantee scheme, which means if an SME has a good business proposal, but it cannot get money from a bank because it doesn't have collateral or doesn't have security, it can actually the bank can actually apply to the guarantee scheme which government has put in place to help SMEs, good SMEs that have good proposals that do not have collateral. So that scheme is in place. Currently is being administered by two banks, FNB and Standard Bank. They have actually already started lending money through that scheme. Other banks are in the pipeline to join. So because the idea is to use banks that have infrastructure everywhere, everywhere in the country. You don't have to travel to Windhoek if you want to apply to a credit guarantee scheme. You go to your bank, you go to the bank branch in your locality, and apply, and then the rest will be managed by the commercial bank itself. So that's one intervention that we have put in place. As I said, the guarantee scheme has been in existence for about a year and a half now. In terms of coaching and mentoring, we piloted through the Development Bank of Namibia. We piloted with a scheme to coach and mentor SMEs. The pilot program has now come to an end. We're now busy rolling out the actual program that is going to be nationwide. So that is again work in progress, and in the next couple of months we will see the actual program being rolled out because the pilot phase has been completed. In the area of equity, I said SMEs do not necessarily need loans all the time because many times they will not be able to pay back the loans. We are now thinking of putting up what we call an equity fund or a share fund. In other words, this fund is going to subscribe shares in these SMEs, and as you know, shares are only paid back when there's either a dividend or the owner has got enough money now to pay back to buy out this fund, and therefore can then have 100% of this business. So that's the thinking, that support them with money that is not going to be paid back immediately, but it has to be paid back. It has to be paid back. A successful business will make enough money. The owner will make enough money to be able to pay back. And the last part is really the market. The market, how we're trying to problem solve around this. Some of you may have participated during our consultation when we were formulating what is called the Code of Good Practices And these consultations actually started last year, and we concluded them in February this year. So I hope some of you have participated in this consultation. What's the code about? The code is really an instrument in terms of the Procurement Act, which says there are some groups of people that need to be favored. Who are those? Some of those are SMEs. Some of those are women, and the code is just giving life to that. How do we favor SMEs when it comes to government procurement, for instance? The code says if I have two people that are competing, one is an SME, one is not an SME, even if the SME is slightly expensive than the other person, the SME should get a tender, because we are trying to support SMEs. Of course, there's a limit to that. There's a cap. The SMEs must not overcharge government, because government is also has to make sure that resources are wisely spent, and you don't actually want to support inefficient businesses. So there's a cap of 10% in terms of price. So the code is now, we have now received input from all the stakeholders. We are busy incorporating those inputs. I believe within the next 2 months or so, that code will be gazetted, so it will become law. And once that happens, it means SMEs will also be supported in terms of getting a market, especially when it comes to government procurement. So I think those are the programs that we're really putting in place to try and support SMEs and create a conducive ecosystem or a conducive environment for SMEs to thrive. Let me come back. I think let me leave that. Let me come back. I think this. If I focus on this list, we will not finish. With regard to IPRM funding, I believe that function is within the National Planning Commission, right? Yes. I guess you need to talk to your champion, not now, because they are the ones who are going to table the budget for you, or to ask for a budget for you. If you think your budget is not enough, you are in good space, because they help us to formulate the budget. So you just submit your proposal to them. With regard to cooperation with ACC, definitely we do, is in many areas, but specifically in 2 areas. The Revenue Authority works very, very closely with ACC. We are now trying to ramp up our compliance framework, and that's now NAMRA. And of course, corruption happens in many, many ways. So we may investigate a tax case, and we find that not only is a violation of the tax law, but there is also a violation of the corruption law. So that information will be passed on to the Anti-Corruption Commission. Same applies to procurement issues. When we do compliance check, because part of the work of the Minister of Finance through what is called the policy unit is to do compliance checks on procurement. Of course, we don't have all the resources to check whether everybody is actually compliant, but we do spot checks here and there. If we find that, you have actually violated the act, and it's something that smells like corruption, that information is also passed on to the Anti-Corruption Commission. My younger brother there, who is talking about big, well, I think at the moment government has got the social protection system. It has got a number of elements. I mean, it's old age pension, disability, orphans and vulnerable people, and also what is the president's thing again? The food distribution, the president thing, the food bank part. That's the word I'm looking for, and the food bank. So the new policy talks about, we have to think about expanding some of these programs and probably have some kind of some modified version of a big. But this is still a concept. How is it going to work? The modified version is not maybe it's not the kind of big that you are talking about. But how is it going to work? That's still something that has to be configured. But we believe it's important to review the whole program in terms of social protection before you actually decide what else do you need to add, because it's already a significant amount of money that we spend on social protection. I think what needs to happen now, and that's what is happening now, is really to try and coordinate all these programs, because they at the moment, they do not really talk to each other. They stand alone. To a certain extent that you may find somebody who's double dipping. You get from here, you get from there, you get from there. You will end up maybe in a month you may even get to 6,000 out of those programs. So it's important to streamline this process before we move on to a new scheme. I think you have talked about maintenance. I think that's a challenge. That's definitely something that the government should pay attention to, and so we take note of that. The young sister there was talking about how do we make sure that we don't just dish out money. Maybe I will throw that to the director of budget, Metaina. But really, safe is to say that for you to get money, you go through a very rigorous process. We spend a great deal of time discussing with ministries, why do you need this money? Of course, a significant part of the money goes to operational budget, pay salaries. So unless you retrench people, there's not much you can do about that. Yeah? But in terms of other programs, or in terms of goods and services, if you want to buy computers, if you want to buy cars, there's a moratorium on buying cars. I think for the last 3 or 5 years or so, government has actually not bought new cars. So in terms of capital budget, again, we heard that it's only those few priorities that are being supported at the moment, because the resources are very, very, very limited, especially at the moment. Very, very limited. So we go through a very rigorous process. There's always room for improvement anyway, and we should always try to find room for improvement. But I can assure you that it's not an easy process if you are a ministry. We don't have friends around there, so they always think that we are too nasty. But Metaina, can I throw it to you, and maybe just to ensure that maybe you talk about how do we ensure that if you are given a budget, that budget is not spent on something else. How do you control that?
Thank you, Dr. Shiimi, and thank you for the question. Just like the minister put it clearly, that it's really very difficult, and we have a lot of processes to be undergone for. Of course, the budget is allocated according to policy priorities, like I presented, and these policy priorities are aligned in terms of the mandate of every office, ministry, and agencies. So, which are cascaded to strategic plans and so on. So in how we make sure that allocated funds are really spent for what it has been appropriated for, if you have a look at our budget books, there are codes in there. Those codes are subdivision, and if funds are allocated for personnel expenditure, just for argument's sake, for 001, that's the code. And when someone wants to to execute a budget and to do procurement for a table or material and suppliers, then our system does not even allow you to go and procure it from 001, because 001 is only meant maybe for personnel expenditure. Same goes to good and other services as well. If you are to travel, for example, I know this is a budgetary item which is not a friendly one that I make use of the DSA, but it's also got a code 021. And if somebody is to travel, you can't pay a daily subsistence allowance from any other code other than 021. And how do we pick it up? We at Treasury level, the officers, ministries, agencies are capturing their payments in the system, but we at Treasury, we pick them up online. Before we transmit a transaction to the central bank, we make sure that what type of a payment is this, and then if it's not really in line, we always delete it, or we stop it, and we advise that this is not from the correct budgetary item where money has been appropriated for. So that is basically how we control, and we make sure that you can't just spend money anywhere else, but there is a control in place. Thank you. I hope I've made it clear, unless if it's something maybe for clarification.
So I think that concludes the first round. So the minister provided updates on the previous consultation, which includes the zero-rate sanitary pads, the stadium, collateral for SMEs, thinking towards state equity funds, and also provided input on some of the additional questions that were asked here regarding the APRN, ACC, basic income grant, and maintenance as well. And then thank you, Ms. Lankela, also for going over how there's monitoring in place. We will take the next round. Let me first extend courtesy to the people on Zoom. Do we have any questions on Zoom? Nothing on Zoom, so we'll go 1, 2, and a lady as well, 3. Okay, so 1, 2, 3.
Yes, good morning and thank you very much. My name is Ben Schernik. I'm the director of the Nutrition and Food Security Alliance of Namibia, which is the umbrella for academia, private sector and civil society, a member of the recently launched Food and Nutrition Security Coordination Structure. So we have a policy and an action plan on that. And I have 3 suggestions that are also in line with that. The first one is related to the sugar tax, which is an item that also already was mentioned last year. So our situation is that we have about a quarter of under 5 children stunted, which is non-reversible and leads to GDP losses of up to 16%. So anemia in women is also high, contributing to stunting, and malnutrition also comes in form of obesity, heart issues, diabetes, and this comes with high health costs. So a sugar tax would have 3 benefits. It would encourage healthy diets and strengthen our resilience and immune system. I think the last 2 years told us what that means. It would generate additional income and revive the economy. And the income would be ring-fenced for nutrition-specific interventions to eliminate the stunting. So other countries have done it. Namibia has also made it as part of its global nutrition commitments end of last year. And also NAFSAN, the Global Sun movement, and also UN partners would be very much willing to support the ministry and government to implement that, to map it out. That was one. The second is just in addition to the colleague's suggestion on the basic income grant or guarantee. The 6,000 on the double dipping is, I guess, a very high number if one considers all the social grants that exist. And I believe the big would actually help to avoid the double dipping. And I just want to give a reason for it, because I think it was this week's newspaper that 58% of Namibians are hungry, which means moderately to severely food insecure. And there are 2 reports currently in cabinet, the cost of hunger study and the filling the nutrient gap. Both are currently in cabinet being approved, or the recommendations are included into the policy currently, into the action plan of the food nutrition security policy. But what I want to highlight is that the costs of hunger are really spelled out in that cost of hunger report that will come out soon. But the fill the nutrient gap tells us that a 5-people household, father, mother, 3 kids, need 1,200 to just have their belly full, but that is not a nutritious meal. Costs for a minimum nutritious diet for these 3 people are 3,200 a month. Now think about what the cashier gets, 1,600, the security guard, 2,000, and the 3,500 would be for food alone to have a minimum nutritious requirements for a human being. So $500 a month for poor households, for every household, would do a significant difference, and those of us who can afford it, we can pay it forward, and I think it would be categorized in the category of projects to revive the economy, that basic income. The last one, I see you want to intervene, and I'm just making it short. Just for the minister to also be aware of the onshore drilling that's happening, or that is supposed to happen in the Kavango region, to balance that with the water resources that we have. 80% of the aquifers could be at risk if there is oil to be found and if this oil is to be drilled. And these water resources, according to UN reports from decades ago, water is the more valuable resource than oil on a long term. With over 30% of Namibians relying on agriculture, we are talking about 80% of underground water being at risk by this oil exploration. assuming that there is enough oil, I mean, that's still another thing to debate, but there's, yeah, a lot about that issue, but our concern is the water. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Minister, dear colleagues, dear friends. I want to use this extraordinarily important opportunity to make two comments. The first is, after I thank you for being here, I think it's extraordinarily important that you're here and that we can engage you directly. And we value that, and I think it's to your credit. The first thing is that I think that we have to make a framing comment around the budget. And that framing comment has to do with the values that underlie the budget. If you argue that it's a people-centered budget, it's need-based, as you argued correctly, but what are the values that should drive the budget? What are the values of greater equity, of greater fairness, of greater justice? Where are the distributive values in the budget? How are we going to address inequality, poverty, and so on? So there has to be a value statement that informs what we do as a government and what we do as a nation. That's the first point. I know it's not popular, but it needs to be said. We are far too unequal and far too unjust. And we need to really deal with this head on, all of us collectively. The second point, I've just read the Earth for All report. The Earth for All report appeared 50 years after the Limits to Growth report by the Club of Rome. And I think on the global framing of the budget, there's a very serious omission if we do not consider that globally there's a decline in the social trust that people invest in governments and public institutions. There's a decline in Namibia. I don't have the time, I can provide the detail later, showing that people are actually moving away from political parties, they're moving away from government, and they do have very low levels of social trust. So that is a critical factor for the budget, if those are indeed your objectives, which I believe. But the second point that I want to make is that all the drivers of life-supporting systems globally are in crisis. There's not a single exception. All the life-supporting systems are in crisis. They include the environment, they include climate, they include water, they include the global food system, they include our forests, and so on and so on and so forth. So my plea, Honourable Minister and dear colleagues, is that the environment and the global context within which we find ourselves needs to feature far more powerfully. My suggestion concretely, apart from green bonds, is that we should establish a national biodiversity fund as a matter of grave urgency to save what we have left of our biodiversity. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much. My name is Salome Kambala. I'm a member of the Africa Peer Review Mechanism, APRM Namibia, as well as a commissioner with the Employment Equity Commission under the Ministry of Labor, responsible to enforce affirmative action in public organizations and also private institutions. I would like to ask this question, because I know if I miss the minister, it's difficult to get him. So let me use this opportunity why his team is also with him. I know this question was raised at one point from the civic society, but normally we are always getting an answer to say, I think you should consult the Ministry of Enterprise. And when you talk to Enterprise, they will say, no, you have to go to the Ministry of Finance. My question, Minister, is why is government board members, their sitting allowances is different? For example, EEC members, board members, is not the same like land reform commissioners, let alone the councillors within the national governing councils, let alone New Era, NAMPA, NBC. It is not the same. How is their sitting allowance determined? And why there is no conformity? Thank you.
Thank you. We'll just allow the Minister to answer those three inputs that we received, and then we're going to have another round of questions and contributions.
Thank you, sir. I think again, a number of them are suggestions that we will take home with, or we'll go home with. And apart from this team here, we also have colleagues that are sitting behind there that are taking notes. So my colleagues from the budget are here to listen to, so they are taking very, very good notes. The gentleman who talked about the sugar, suggestion of the sugar tax, I don't think there is any debate and argument about the health impact of sugar. I believe most of us will probably agree, although there may be some who like their coffee sweet and their tea sweet, and I know some of them. But we fully understand the health impact. I think the issue is the timing. So do you generally when you have a serious economic calamity, and we are in a serious economic calamity, you don't increase taxes. So that's a general principle. That's conventional wisdom. And therefore, you haven't heard us talking about increasing taxes at the moment. You have heard us talking about reducing taxes. In fact, if we had more financial space, we would have provided more tax relief than increasing tax. So the issue is really about the timing. When do you do that? So we're busy setting up our tax policy unit. As you know, that NAMRA, the tax administration, was responsible for both policy and administration. But now the administration part is with NAMRA. The policy part is still with the ministry. We are busy setting up that office so that we can do a comprehensive review of our tax policy. So that will also be one of the things that is going to be looked at. Obviously, you will only increase tax when things improve. In fact, somebody was telling me that if you really want to be an enemy of my farmers, you must increase sugar tax, because apparently the farm workers like their coffee very, very sweet. So, but I think it's just a question of the timing. So the health impact we really understand, and I hope you will all support us when we do that, because I'm sure it's going to be a huge uproar. I think with regard to BIC, I think again we understand that I think there's a need for social protection, to improve our social protection. At the moment, as I said, we want to consolidate everything before we can expand the social protection system. With regard to drilling in Kavango, I believe, I'm not an expert on that. I believe, in fact, the gentleman that you're sitting next to is an environmentalist, so he is more qualified than me to talk about the environmental impact. And I guess, but I believe, there was a parliamentary mission that went to that region. They have compiled a report. Some, areas of non-compliance were identified, but also in some other areas, compliance have been assured. But I guess this is something that we need to check. We have to promote economic activities, but of course we have to promote economic activities in a responsible manner. So if there is a violation of our environmental laws, that has to be pointed out. With regard to Professor Dupesani, I think again thank you for your kind words and also the feedback that you're giving us and suggestions that you're giving us in making sure that we anchor the budget on our values. If you look at the Vision 2030 document or the Vision 2030 program, so it says something about what values does Namibia want to promote. The development plans also talk about the values and some of those issues that you have mentioned there in terms of addressing inequality are captured in those documents. And therefore the budget is supposed to be anchored along those documents. And that's why when we're talking about investment in human capital, it's really one way of addressing inequality is to invest in human capital, not only in terms of education, but also in terms of health, so that you get better health outcomes, but also in terms of reproductive health. Yeah, because you want people to plan their reproduction activities and things like that better because they have information. I think all those are things that are going to address investment in human capital. But also the social protection system is also trying to help us to deal with issues of inequality and poverty. But also more importantly, one way of addressing inequality is really to have people who are getting quality wages. So promoting economic activities that are not marginal, but economic activities that is creating enough income for people to earn better wages is also a strategy that will help us to reduce inequality. The question on the board. Well, I think there are institutions that are classified in terms of the public institution, PEGA, Public Enterprise Governance Act. Yeah, Public Enterprise Act. So those institutions are classified. If you are, for instance, a tier 1 institution, the level of board fees are also defined, that it must not go above this. If you are tier 2, this is a cap. If you are tier 3, this is a cap. Yeah, so there are guidelines for any entity that is defined as a public enterprise. Some public enterprises are commercial enterprises, some are non-commercial. But there are also boards and committees that are actually not public enterprises. And therefore those guidelines will not apply to them. That's probably where you find the difference. APRM, I'm not sure whether it's, in fact I know it's not a public enterprise because I don't see it on the list of the public enterprises there. So the question is that how do I align it to other committees? Maybe that's where we need to start. But in terms of public enterprises, I think the alignment is there. It's only things that are not really classified, and that's probably where we still need to do more work in terms of making sure that all the committees that government has established are more or less enjoying the same amount of fees that are paid to their corresponding committees elsewhere in different ministries. So that's probably where the gap is, but others are actually aligned. So I hope I have provided answers to the questions. I think there was an earlier question on the Karutura Hospital. The gentleman who deals with the development budget can provide clarity to that.
Yes, thank you very much, Honorable Minister. I think the gentleman in yellow over there posed the question on the upgrading, the allocation on the upgrading and the renovation of the Karutura Hospital. Yes, as National Planning Commission and as well as the Line Ministry, we made some budgetary provisions on the upgrading and renovation of the Karutura Hospital. at which we managed to solicit the funds and give an allocation of 5 million. So far, as we speak, we have the line ministry have started spending on that 5 million. The financial execution to date on that project, it stands at 21%. I think, yes, they have started executing or implementing the project. Thank you. Resources, they are not enough. So we can only give what we can. Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Mr. Martin. So we heard on the health impact of sugar, social protection system as opposed to BIG, drilling in the Okavango, the values of the budget document or the values of the budget are actually captured in other documents previously, as well as the Public Governance Act in response to the question we got from Ms. Kambala. We're going to move into the last round of contributions. Just a reminder that you can also make contributions in writing as well. And also just to maybe remind that the purpose also for the meeting is actually to raise issues that you think should be prioritized in the 2023-2024 national budget. We'll start with the lady here, the gentleman at the back, and the gentleman next to him. And then do we have any questions on Zoom? One contribution on Zoom. So I think we can start with the Zoom one, and then 1, 2, 3. I don't know if we can extend the time because we have, how long can we extend? Can we extend the time or? Okay. Okay. So let's try to keep it, yeah. Okay. So would it be possible if we all kept contributions to 1 minute so that we can accommodate here as well? Okay. Okay. So let's start with Zoom first.
And it goes as follows. Thank you for this consultation. I want to bring to the attention to the panel of the National Environmental Education for Sustainable Development Policy and the related strategy and action plan 2022 to 2026. This policy lies within MEFT but has no funds allocated to it, thereby making it so far ineffective. Much work has been done to develop these frameworks, but now we need, Okay, now we need funds to be able to act to educate for sustainable development.
Thank you. Have we captured that? So I think that the text is quite small here, but I'll just maybe see. Is that can you make it bigger? Okay, thank you for this consultation. I bring attention to the panel of the National Environmental Education for Sustainable Development Policy. So it's a policy. And the related strategy and action plan 2022 to 2026. This policy lies within the Ministry of Environment, but has no funds allocated to it, thereby making it so far ineffective. Much work has been done to develop these frameworks, but now we need funds to be able to act, to educate for sustainable development. And that's by Victoria Kedding from NADID.
Thank you very much. My name is Brigitte Oasis. I'm representing Mountain Ice. That's a community-based organization. Firstly, I'll just say that congratulations to the ministry on the NAMRA. It's good, it works. But the next level is to look at companies that are evading tax. I know you mentioned that a little bit. But just to make sure that you really look into that issue, because that's where you lose a lot of money as well. And there are a lot of companies and organizations that do evade tax. Secondly, there is no one, or not everyone needs a house. Some people want a flat. And not everyone needs a farm. Some people just need a piece of land where they can build a house or a small garden or do small stock farming. So with this I'm saying the country has a lot of resources. Even before COVID we had a lot of resources. Yeah? The country came with the resources. It's always been there. We have to really interrogate ourselves very well as the government to look into where those resources are going. And we know where bulk of the resources are going. We are aware. The country really needs to look at it very, very fairly, yeah, to allocate it fairly. Only then can we as a country look at issues of land allocation, urban land, to provide a proper housing for a family, and in the rural areas, provide a piece of land to a family of a group of 10 people, of a group of 20 people, in order to farm. Yeah? And then, only if we distribute the resources fairly, can we look at the big as a social protection issue and not see it as something else. We can have 10 grants that does not work for the country. But if we have one grant that really works for everyone, like the gentleman was talking about nutrition, that is a real issue, Mr. Minister. And we should look at the basic income grant or some form of it seriously. And all this comes back to the resources that we have in the country and what we can do with that. My last point, I'm coming from a psychosocial support side, is the mental health issues. That is also a serious issue in Namibia. If we can look into a one-stop shop, like the Ministry of Home Affairs that we've just built, that will be great for mental health issues. Because we cannot send around somebody who's already traumatized from the GBV unit to the Central Hospital, to the Red Cross, to receive the services. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, I think it's afternoon. Thank you very much for the presentation. My name is Nelson Prada from CIVIC. My issue is mainly unemployment, and I just want to build on something that the minister was saying. Yes, we have inequality. There are some people that have a lot of money and they have very few money. Did the ministry perhaps consider issues about incentivizing those that have a lot of money to get some sort of refunds or incentives if they employ people? Because we can see there is a number of people, especially now that the economy is revamping, they are doing, they are refurbishing their houses, they are building houses, they are buying farms. But if they can be an incentive for those that can prove that they are hiring people and they are paying people. Because at the end of the day, we have you can see everywhere people are really buying farms, they are buying plots, those that have disposable income, but because they don't even register their employees under the Social Security scheme, because there is no really an incentive to declare that they are employing people. So that's my contribution.
Good afternoon. My name is Klaus Schade. I'm an economist and IPPR associate. Very briefly, I think we are not exploiting our available domestic financial resources. in the country. Just 2-3 examples. We have started with auctioning fish quotas. DRC, it was just in the news, is auctioning oil licenses and so on. So I think we should move ahead and auction more of the fishing quotas, not just the development quota, and other natural resource licenses. It could bring in at least a couple of hundreds of millions, if not billions. Secondly, I think the ministry should strongly reconsider the proposed income tax amendments. For instance, the zero rating of sanitary pads will not benefit the poor because if they can afford anyhow to buy, if VAT is reduced, they usually buy at cooker shops. The cooker shops do not add VAT. They will not lower their prices when they buy the sanitary pads at a lower price at wholesalers or other retailers in town. There are many other reasons as well, because it's not targeted and so on and so forth. Secondly, the proposed increase in tax-deductible pension fund contributions to 150,000 per annum will only benefit the better off. Even if you earn 500,000 per annum, you will not be able to put aside 150,000 for the pension fund contribution. This will increase income inequality, not reduce income inequality. If you are in the highest tax bracket of 36% tax, you will save $54,000 per year. That is half of the average salary or wage of a Namibian worker. So I think we need to really go through our tax act, income tax act, and make it more equitable. The same applies, of course, to all the other tax-deductible allowances, from housing allowances, car allowances, and so on. Those who really need our support, they do not pay taxes because they earn less than 50,000 per annum. They are unemployed or employed in the informal sector. Okay, I have a lot of other things, but let me stop here. Thanks.
Thank you. I know a lot of you are going to be upset with me, but that was the last round of inputs because the minister, because we were scheduled to actually finish at 1 with the Q&A. You're also very welcome to please submit inputs in writing. Also, the ministry has been very receptive towards consulting with us and also providing training as well. So maybe just be on the lookout for more interventions like this.
Thank you very much. Again, comments and advice, very well received. It's interesting. I think I want to switch roles one day. One day I want to sit there as well. Because, you know, maybe that's the beauty of being in a community, because we will always have different points of view. So some of these suggestions that we are discussing here actually came from the civil society, especially the zero rating of sanitary pads. But we are also now criticizing our own suggestions. But that's the nature of life. We will have different perspectives. But we understand. We understand that it's important that we look at these things more rigorously, so that we understand the impact of some of these policy measures from different perspectives. I think on the lady from the environment, I believe if she can just visit her ministry, which is the Ministry of Environment, so that they can articulate their needs better. And when we have budget consultation with the ministry, if it's really a critical need, and of course the needs are so many, ministries come with many proposals in terms of what needs to be funded. It doesn't mean that everything that is presented for funding is going to be be funded, because resources are unfortunately limited, especially now, resources are very, very limited. If you compare our revenue in 2019 to the revenue of now, we have almost lost about 7 billion of revenue. So resources are very, very limited. So we have to allocate it in such a way that we are able to support the funding of basic services of government while revenue is recovering. So I think I want us to understand it from that perspective, that we don't sit with a pot full of money that is going to meet all our wants and all our needs, not wants, but all our needs, but we try our best to allocate resources to where we think government functions must, or services must still continue to be rendered. But please talk to the Minister of Environment. They should present your need better. With regard to the information about companies evading tax, I think that's definitely something that we want to hear. So please speak up more. And if you know that there are companies that are evading tax, please report them to NAMRA. So NAMRA will be very, very keen to have a conversation with them. But as I said at the beginning, we're trying to enhance the capacity of NAMRA to do enforcement and make sure that there is compliance. It may take a bit of time, so I know some of us are frustrated now. This is a baby that is being established. It may not be effective at the beginning, but we believe that there's a lot of goodwill in there, and over time we will see some of those culprits being brought to book. But in any system, you'll always find culprits who will avoid the long arm of the law. But there won't be many. NAMRA is really asserting themselves, and soon some of those will be caught in the net. With regard to housing, I think I do not disagree with you. I think we definitely need to spend more time and resources on housing and more creating housing opportunities. I used to be a board member of the Shark Dwellers. I see my colleagues are there. Mbanga and Anna are sitting there. So they are the experts. So in fact, the government has started looking at revising the housing policy and all other related policies that support housing. And she's one of the members of the panel of experts who are actually looking at that. And I'm looking forward to receive the final version of that. And it's really looking at different things. It's no longer going to, government is no longer going to intervene in the usual way. If we're looking at what's the best way of, for instance, upgrading the informal settlements instead of building houses. And when you're upgrading, how do you plan it better in such a way that you also create some housing opportunities for people to do businesses and things like that. How do you do proper mapping and things like that? So I think there are good things that are in that policy. We just need to finalize it. How should central government support local authority in terms of bulk infrastructure, for instance, when it comes to informal settlement, and also in terms of developing new green fields. That's especially for lower, or I'm saying green fields, but really new areas of land especially for lower income, for the lower income group. So I think we have changed gear in terms of housing, and but we have also changed gear in terms of resettlement, because I heard you talking about farming. The resettlement policy was presented last week or this week, in fact, in cabinet. Provided some input in that. So they will still do some further consultations. So I think that will be an opportunity for all of us to provide input into this policy, so that when we finalize these policies, it will be a policy that has attracted all our input. It has benefited from all our input. With mental health, I can't say much. I think you are the experts. So I'm taking notes. The incentives, Nelson. So I'm not sure how to structure those incentives, but we are looking at, for instance, what is called the special economic zone. Now, the special economic zone is basically to say, how do I attract certain types of industries that I want to promote? The policy framework is almost finalized. It's probably going to be approved by cabinet in the next 2 weeks or so. And within that, there are also some incentives that are being proposed. But I don't always get excited when I hear incentives, because we had a scheme of incentives, but it didn't really work. We had what is called the EPZ, which was very generous in terms of incentives. You know, if you're in the EPZ, you don't pay tax at all. And I frown about things that, or companies that don't want to pay tax, but that was in there. Because tax is what we use for all our, to provide all these social services. So if you don't want to pay tax at all, then then you're not a good activity. Yeah. So, but we are looking at those things. But I'm not sure whether you will have an incentive that is targeting you and me, who is employing somebody on the farm. So I need to talk to you about this so that I better understand your perspective. With regard to what else? I think there was a question about optimizing our natural resources. Mr. Shade, I think yes, that's what Helvi was talking about. I think when he was talking about those 3 circles there, one of the circles was talking about how do we better optimize our natural resources. Can we auction the fish? We started doing it with the government part. But I also want to hear from you, civil service. I mean civil society. I work with the civil servants, that's why I get confused. Civil society, when we start to auction these things, please give us support. We were taken to court, but I haven't heard you saying anything. Yeah, workers say they are going to demonstrate, but I haven't heard you saying anything. These are difficult political issues. Yeah, and we can only get around them if we all speak with one voice. So when people demonstrate in my office, in front of my office, I'm going to call you. Yeah. So, but I think there's no debate about that. With regard to with regard to the sanitary pads, and again, that's something that we can continue to debate. As I said, it was actually a suggestion that came from a similar platform such as this one. Pension fund contribution, yes, I think you have a point there. But the objective was not really to reduce inequality. The objective is really how do you encourage savings? Because you also need savings. Yeah, and unfortunately, not everybody is able to save. Yeah, so how do you incentivize those who are able to save? Because the kind of infrastructure that we build here, it's built with our own savings. Yeah? When we build roads and hospitals, we borrow those monies from your pension funds. Now, if your pension funds do not have money, it means we will not be able to have a functioning financial market. And if you don't have a functioning financial market, it also means that your development will also be constrained. So I think one will also have to look at it from that perspective. Yeah. What else? Yeah? Does anybody want? Yeah, I think the last 3 was about that. Yeah.
Thank you, Minister. Colleagues from the Ministry of Finance as well as the NPC. I'm just going to call up Graham to come deliver the closing remarks. But before you start heading out, please just make sure you've signed the attendance registers as well. And also please fill in the feedback forms as well, so we can improve on the next one. And if you're a speaker or the technical team, there's a separate list for you to sign.
All right, so I'm Graham Hopwood from the Institute for Public Policy Research. We're very happy to have co-organized this with CIVIC plus 264, the Civil Society Information Center. I think what we'll try to do is consolidate all the points into a document in the next week, and because others might not have had a chance to make their points, I think we can still receive, send us an email, info@civic264.org.na in the next week, and we can add your points to the document, which we can then pass on to the ministry. So none of these important issues are lost, and that we can also add a few more if they haven't been made today. So just a little bit of context. One of the springboards for today's meeting is the Open Budget Survey, which the IPPR has been conducting for more than 10 years in Namibia. And over the years, Namibia's improved in different aspects of this, particularly in the availability of budget information online. But we've always done rather badly on public participation, while some parts of the world are moving ahead in terms of these types of consultations and developing mechanisms for public participation. So this meeting was, actually from the ministry's side, the suggestion came that they wanted to do more on public participation, and they wanted to create a formal calendar of formal meetings, and not just for civil society, but for other sectors, and also, I think, beyond Windhoek, not just in Windhoek, but you'll be rolling out a whole series of meetings online and actual around the country as well. So this is the start of a process, and we really do need to make sure that we maintain and sustain and develop the momentum of today. So this is not going to be the last meeting of this kind by any means with civil society. And as I say, I think other sectors and other parts of the country are going to be drawn into this type of consultation on the budget. And we believe this will make the budget more responsive, maybe more value-driven, and more effective at the end of the day in the way that it assists ordinary Namibians. So I should make a couple of thank yous before we close off. First of all, thank you to the Minister and the team from the Ministry and the National Planning Commission. We really appreciate what started actually last year with online consultations and now has developed to this point of a physical meeting and online as well. Thank you to the colleagues in the Civil Society Information Centre, Carola Engelbrecht, Bradley Chonguerrero, my colleagues in IPPR, Deshi Fikameni and Mia Hindu, who helped today. Also, a word of thanks to the Hans Seidel Foundation, who are financing this part of Civil Society Information Centre's work, and this couldn't have happened without them today, without their support. So I'll end off here by saying mainly thanks to you for coming, and let's, as I say, maintain the momentum, keep this going, bring in more people, make it a national, not just a Windhoek activity going forward. So with those final words, I don't think I've missed anything, have I? So the last word, the most important maybe, is that there are some refreshments and some snacks, I think, outside somewhere in the courtyard. So please, if you can stay, do join us for that. But thanks very much for coming, and have a great rest of the day.